The Plotaholics podcast is not meant to make light of those with an actual serious addiction. If you have an actual serious addiction, the Plotaholics podcast should not be used as a replacement for treatment. If you are not in a treatment program for substance abuse, and you are somehow still offended, then fuck you too. Sincerely, your hosts.
We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you. Oh man, here we are.
Oh boy,
Mr. Brian's hand, who is clearly listening to what just aired.
Yeah.
Welcome, Brian. Welcome, everyone, to this very special edition of the Plotaholics Live, where we dig into the Skywalker Saga in what is ultimately a futile task to break down Star Wars in the next 60 minutes.
Yeah, there's a lot to go through. Over 40 plus years of awesomeness to get into. Losses, gains, and joy of joys and low of lows, not to mention episode 2, but we're going to do it.
Yep, and we're going to do it, and we are not alone. Today we are joined by the one and only godfather of indie art and the Jedi on our little panel today. With, you know, he's the only representative of the light side of this thing, so we might as well bring him in, Mr. Joe Compton. Mr. Joe.
Woo!
Hello, Jedi Master Joe. Welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome to our really big show.
It's a big show we have today. Joe, how are you?
I am fantastic.
And how is your hat?
It's pretty good.
Always with the hat. I can never tell. I talked to Katie Salidas about this when she was on the Thanksgiving show. I can never tell if Brian is being complimentary or insulting when he talks about different things that people have going on.
Oh, it's all complimentary. It's all complimentary.
Well, I mean, last night you said that you trusted Joe to take him to get you to the airport, and again, like,
hey, not just anyone can wear a hat like that and make me feel comfortable.
That's a fair point. Also, not sure if that's a compliment.
Right. That would be the one. Skeptical one. I would have been skeptical about.
Yeah. So I want to start today by asking you guys, I think, a pretty basic question in Star Wars fandom, and that is, what is the correct order in which to watch the saga?
Wow.
Do you go chronologically the way they were released, or do you go in story order, or does it change based on what the goals of the watching experience is?
That is a good question. Go ahead, Joe.
I think it does change. I think it just depends on what you are aiming to do. I think. I would probably start with the originals, the 4, 5, 6, and just because if you've never experienced it, that is where the fandom really will get you started. You could do Rogue One too if you wanted to, like maybe do Rogue One and 4, 5, 6, just because Rogue One kind of leads into 4, but really, you really won't probably appreciate the effort that Rogue One goes to at the end unless you've seen 4 already. So I think 4, 5, 6 is where you start, and then honestly, probably I would go to Rogue One, and then the prequels. You could probably skip them if you really wanted to. I don't know, but maybe you'd be interested in 1 and 3. We won't name 2 in that mix. Solo, you can just leave. That has nothing to do with anything that goes on in this universe. And then I would say if you really liked 4, 5, 6, I would go right to Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm. Kylo Tan.
I would actually. It once again, it depends on what you're searching for. If you're just wanting to get into the story again, I think that you go chronologically by storyline. So episode 1, 2, and 3. Then you go to Rogue One, then the originals 4, 5, and 6, and then go into Force Awakens and Last Jedi. That's the way that I would do it now. And I love this graphic that you have up here. I would more likely than not go with that's probably the way that I would do it. I mean, unless you just now, if you just want just the bare bones, then obviously you just go with 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, so the graphic is every major Star Wars media property outside of comics and books that is considered now canon. The Clone Wars, Rebels, and Resistance and Mandalorian are all television series. So if we limit ourselves just to the cinematic experience, then you're looking at the 3 trilogies basically. And I think for me, it goes like this. If it's the first time you've ever watched Star Wars, I think you start in the middle with the original trilogy. But I think it's because of what you said, Jared. Like the quality of that original trilogy is better, and you're much more likely to stick with the whole thing if you start there and then work your way out. But after you've watched it in release order, I think that it does it some justice to go and watch it in story order.
That's fair.
The prequels are it's interesting because the prequels are living through a bit of a renaissance in some ways. Like people are like the tides have sort of turned on some of the public opinion of the prequels.
It's like we talked about in Thanksgiving. I think time heals, and you get this you get this buffer of time that kind of you look back on and you go, you know what, in retrospect, and especially when they're putting out garbage, if they're putting out more garbage, in retrospect, those aren't as bad as you thought they were. Because
well, it's interesting because just this week, I saw a comment I've started to see comments in the threads about the Rise of Skywalker, where some people are saying, I actually went back and watched The Last Jedi this week, and it wasn't as bad as I remembered.
Right.
And so, we're already starting to see the tide turn on what I think is probably the most divisive of the films so far.
But for reasons that just sort of are frustrating.
Well,
the division of The Last Jedi, because I actually worked with a guy who was breaking down why he didn't like Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just wanted to punch him right in his mouth because his reasonings were so misogynistic and bigoted that it's like, so you just don't like it because it's not a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male that's the hero. That is your main issue. No, that's not it. I'm not racist, but it's like, and once that is your prefix to an argument,
as soon as
your argument is automatically lost.
Right.
It's like you didn't like the idea that an Asian woman was the key to the resistance dealing with things. You didn't like that the women were largely in charge, and you didn't like that individuals of color were at the forefront. That's what, at least this one. I'm not saying everyone, I'm saying this one person. And it's like, no, you just don't like Star Wars because it's not the circle jerk for the white male that you're used to.
Yeah, and any criticism that you hear that is of the contrary to what you basically, the largest criticism I think that we've heard is the social justice warrior sort of like anti-social justice warrior critique, right? Like, why have they got to insert all of these, racial identity politics and stuff like that into my Star Wars? Anybody that doesn't make that argument makes that argument by making a shittier argument trying to justify it, right? Like, they're like, well, Leia floated through space. And I'm like, well, bro, like, Luke Skywalker didn't use his targeting mechanism in an X-Wing to blow up a Death Star.
Yeah.
So what is the point?
Yeah.
Like a 7-year-old kid got in a Naboo starfighter and destroyed an entire fleet. What is your point? Like
Right.
those two dudes had a dick. Is that your point?
Yeah, it's like you're watching a series where space wizards use laser swords to fight with telekinesis. Okay, and you've got no problem with this, but Leia floated through space.
Now, did
And,
Leia
and
floating?
the leader of the whole thing is a 700-year-old little green dude.
Yeah. And
Those greenies ain't gonna take my job.
those greenies. The greenie, of course, in question.
He is nowhere near as adorable as he is in this. He's nowhere near as adorable.
As you mean as this?
Yeah. Oh, look at him. He's got his pre-pubes on his head and everything. Look at him.
Yeah, but as any of those incredibly insightful fanboys would tell you, that ain't Baby Yoda.
That's just the child. That ain't the Baby Yoda.
So yes.
I feel bad for people that are just coming to the fandom because they have to deal with the toxicity that the fandom has become. Well, there was a point in time where I was so proud to be a Star Wars fan, and then as the toxic fandom started really creeping in over the last 10, 12 years or so, it's just like, now we have the light side of the fandom and the dark side of the fandom.
It was the thing that we had over the Star Trek, the Trekkies, right? The Trekkies were always those rabid, crazy fandom guys, and the Star Wars guys were the more calm, could talk and have rational and educational discussions about the universe, and discussions like they had in Clerks and things like that. But and we could always make fun of ourselves and that and the Trekkies were always like, no, this is serious,
Well, and this is something that I actually pulled for us to speak to specifically, and that is the Phantom Menace.
I love it.
Nice.
This is a sort of a catchphrase that's been floating around the interwebs about this toxic aspect of Star Wars fandom, and it has to begin with. I'm sure it began long ago in little pockets, but before the advent of social media and everything, like these people that hated this specific stuff, they didn't have a way to amplify their voices, right?
They were the guys that would get shouted down if they were standing around and talking in the comic shops or the gaming shops talking Star Wars. These are the guys that the other ones would look at and be like, "You're an idiot. Shut up."
Right.
And then now we've got the internet and they can form their own little groups, and then they come together in their, "Ooh, everything is horrible."
Yeah. And so
I contest that it really started with fan films, though. Lucas made it a point to really emphasize that he wants to see the fans and their interpretations of the universe and to extend the universe. He really wanted them, careful what you wish for, right? Because he really wanted them to be a part of the universe. So he asked them to make fan movies, and people, with a lot of talent were making really impressive things. And then there were some people who were not making as impressive things, and those things kind of got into an argument with one another, and here you go. And now everybody thinks that Rian Johnson just made a fan film, and that's,
Well, and I think that there's a large contingency of Star Wars fans that have been around from the beginning that would argue that that's ultimately what Disney's doing, and they're all butthurt that Lucas didn't, that Disney didn't listen to Lucas, and that Lucas didn't, all of a sudden now everybody's swinging from George Lucas's nuts, even though.
But they were just hating on him like how long ago?
Yeah, like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And
didn't he sold the property primarily because of all the toxicity? He was just over it. Isn't that correct?
Done with it, yeah.
Yeah, he was just like, you know what? I'm done. The toxicity is just, it's getting to be too much. And you want to really look at the toxicity of the Phantom fan base, the men, or however we did. I'm sorry, but you got one guy who refuses the Phantom Menace. You get one guy who refuses to ever act again in Jake Lloyd, and take that as you will. He can't, and he's still dealing with the mental hardships that came from being the young Anakin Skywalker. And you want to talk about getting trashed. I mean, this is a guy, not looking to get political. I'm just making a parallel. People got butthurt because someone mentioned someone's child's name as a station in a monarchy, and people lost their minds, and then said individual attacked another child individual over a situation. You think that's bad? Look at what that poor bastard went through.
Yeah.
And then you have another guy, the amazingly talented Ahmed Best, who was damn near contemplating suicide. So, I mean, come on. If I were George Lucas, I would have washed my hands of it completely as well. Because it's like, wow, if I would have known that this was going to be, I probably never would have wanted to create it in the first place.
Ahmed Best is getting ready to come back to the Star Wars universe in a way. He's hosting the game show Jedi Temple for Disney Plus.
Nice.
Oh, wow. And you know what? Good for him, because whether you like Jar Jar Binks or whether you don't, he is still an important character in the Star Wars mythos, whether you like him or you don't. And I think that it's brilliant storytelling and writing, even though you don't have to like a character for them to still have importance. It is because of Jar Jar Binks that the Sith took over the galaxy. Let's just look at that for a second. This bumbling boob cast the vote and spoke eloquently enough to get other star systems to vote Palpatine supreme power. That is important.
I still believe that Jar Jar was supposed to be the big bad.
That would have been amazing. Honestly, if he would have been like, I don't know. And then his eyes just
about Darth Jar Jar. Are you guys familiar with the theory of Darth Jar Jar?
He was supposed to have been like Palpatine's master or something, wasn't he?
That was, I think, the theory originally, and then because of how he was received, the theory goes that Jar Jar was supposed to be the big bad. And you can see, like, there's a really great thread on Reddit that lays all of this out in like literary analysis style with clips from the movie and like examples of Jar Jar doing like crazy martial arts stuff, although it looks like an accident.
He does look like he's doing like sort of a drunken master style. I mean, look at that final battle on Naboo.
Right. Yeah. That's the one that they cite a lot.
Yeah.
It's like the drunken monkey sort of.
Yeah. It would have been brilliant. Like, honestly, if it would have turned out that he's like with Padme and all them, and then like suddenly he's just like, I don't know what to do. Misa's so scared. And then he just like, they turn around and look at the door, and then his eyes just the Force visage drops. And we see this evil Gungan warrior. Because those Gungans, you want to talk about like physically powerful. Did you remember how high he jumped in episode 1?
Yeah.
To dive into the water? That takes amazing leg strength. You have to be the leg strength of an NBA basketball player, or even an Olympic long jumper, is amazing. It's staggering. It's almost superhuman. Matter of fact, I think that a lot of people were saying one of the theories was that Quicksilver from X-Men, he wasn't so much a speedster, but his mutation was super strength in his lower body, which is what allowed him to move at that speed. So the fact that Jar Jar was able to leap that high and be able to swim, and then he's swimming slower to allow these Force users to keep up with him. Jar Jar is a physically powerful character. And if him living under the sea, he's got a connection to nature. And why not have a strong connection to the Force? It would not shock me if the Gungans were actually a very powerful Force-using society, but they just get written off as goofy because of how they speak.
Well, I think Lucas is pretty notorious on smaller scales in the original trilogy and maybe not even on small scales in some cases, of using obvious misdirection. you know, Vader being Luke's father,
Leia
even
being
little
Luke's
things
sister.
like even little things like we're gonna fly the Millennium Falcon into this cave, and then oops, surprise, it's like a giant space worm.
Yeah.
Like little thing, like he's always sort of like looking for a twist, right? And I think that maybe there's something to it. Maybe he was sowing the seeds of like this big misdirection, but then because of how Jar Jar was received, because imagine this, right? Imagine like Jar Jar comes out and he's received exactly like Lucas thought he would be, which was probably more like Yoda, right? Like he's this like sort of like he's a very kid-friendly character, he's goofy, and then like I'm gonna like flip the script on this thing in the third act of this trilogy, and he's just gonna go like bonkers on everybody. That would have been really cool, but
I would have loved that. I
Yeah.
would have loved it.
and that's
I would have loved the
something-
fact that even if he was Palpatine's like a real apprentice,
right.
like Maul and Tyrannus were just, you know, red herrings. That they were just they were a misdirect.
So it's something that I've talked a lot about, especially in my defense of The Last Jedi. And that is that when you are presented with any property that you know is 3 chapters long, you have to read all 3 chapters before you can judge any standalone chapter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like even Attack of the Clones, as much as I talk trash on top of Attack of the Clones, it's still an important
Terrible
chapter. It's a terrible chapter, but it's still a very important chapter in the original, in the sequel trilogy. Excuse me. It's an important tale of why Anakin Skywalker fell, and the seeds of it were sown in episode 2. I remember everyone saying episode 3, wow, he just drastically changed and went to the dark side. No, it was not drastic. The seeds were sown in just the standard childish fear in episode 1. Episode 2, it was even more at the forefront. In episode 3, it was the culmination.
Whoever the poster artist was, he needed to be fired. That was
The poster art for the prequel trilogy was not good. Now,
It really wasn't.
I wanted to talk.
I'll contest this too. Can I
Yeah,
throw out something
Absolutely. I was
about
about to go to you, Joe, but go ahead.
about 2 and why it's important?
Yeah.
Is it's setting up a theory that is going to happen in the Rise of Skywalker that most people are subscribing to, and it's the clone theory. And without 2 in establishing that the Empire has control of the clones, you don't have that theory. I don't think that's floated out there. Now, whether it turns out to be come to fruition or not, that Rey is, you know, the ultimate clone, or you know, whatever. That you without that setup, I don't think it's possible. So it's
Great point by
that
you.
respect too.
Great point by you.
Now, I am of
Even as terrible as it was made.
I'm of the school of I am a bit of a prequel apologist, and I did not like them. Well, originally I liked them because they were my first Star Wars movies, right? Now I was able to watch
for that.
Yeah, I was able to see I watched the original trilogy a ton growing up, and I saw the much maligned special editions in theaters. But the Phantom Menace was my first Star Wars, right? Like that was my generation Star Wars. And so when I saw it, I was excited just to have a version of this like historic property to call my own. But as I got some distance from it and I grew up a little bit and sort of like, you know, learned more about storytelling and stuff like that, I was like, well, maybe they're not good. And I didn't revisit them for a long time. But when The Last Jedi was coming out, I did a rewatch of everything, and as we do often, right, when we're getting ready for the new thing. And when I was working my way through the prequels, I thought these aren't bad, but the dialogue is either real clunky, or the actors did a real bad job with it, or a little column A, little column B. Because if you can sort of push past like the really bad, what I learned from episode 2 is that George Lucas can't write romance. And But at the same time, that romance is incredibly important. It's important that he falls in love with Padme, and it's important that they do this in secret. All of that stuff is incredibly important to the overall narrative of this thing.
Mhm.
But at the same time, George Lucas can't write a romantic scene to save his life.
Well, yeah, because even
he can't write a death scene to save his life either. But
fair.
Or explain death, or explain why someone's dying. Because
that's the thing that really bothered me about the prequels, is how it really truly ended at the very, very end. I mean, you just had this incredible lightsaber battle that is probably, for me, it's probably number one on the list, and I just think it was amazing. Even to Hayden Christensen's credit, I'll give him a little bit of credit. His whininess worked pretty well in that moment, in those moments. But I just, for her to just die of grief is, to me, it just didn't. It's so. It was just like, it was almost like, okay, we've got to finish these. How are we gonna finish them? Fuck it, they just die. Let's go on.
It's just grief.
They just died.
Here's my thing. His dialogue in the original trilogy isn't all that great either. It's just that you had an amazing leading and supporting cast that could make it work. I mean, you had Hamill, you had Fisher, and you have Ford, who can make the three of them are talented enough, especially together, that they could make it all work. And then you throw in, Billy D. Williams as Lando, and Billy D. Williams, I'm sorry, that man could sell tuna and tell somebody it's caviar, and they'll buy it. Okay.
The same goes, and honestly, and we're not going to give a ton of time here to Solo, because I agree with Joe that it's mostly a waste. But you can say the same thing about Donald Glover.
Absolutely. Donald Glover is an amazing actor. He's an amazing talent. He's an amazing musician.
And he's the only person alive that has that Billy D. Williams energy.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm telling you right now, we are going to see in the next 10 to 20 years, we are going to see some great things out of Donald Glover. Matter of fact, in the third Spider-Man movie, if they don't, go back to Donald Glover's character and make him the Prowler, Marvel has definitely missed the mark. But Lucas's dialogue has never been that great. It's just that because of, I guess, I don't want to do a comparison of generational acting talent, because we'll be here all day talking about it. However, I will say that even as talented as Natalie Portman is, even as talented as Ewan McGregor, Liam Neeson, and Samuel L. Jackson are, they just weren't able to take Lucas's dialogue and make it work like it was in the original.
I think McGregor did a very
McGregor did well. McGregor's the guy. This was the prequels were his coming out party. They were his shot to international fame. He channeled Sir Alec Guinness perfectly. We sit here and we marvel at how Donald Glover channeled the Billy D. Williams energy and made Lando his own. Ewan McGregor did the same thing with Sir Alec Guinness.
What I want to say is about the difference in like the writing in the original trilogy. I don't think that it's a generational talent thing. I think that it's a style thing. Because the original trilogy was camp, it was fun, it wasn't
supposed to be taken seriously.
Rock opera, it was bananas. But then when he comes back for the prequel trilogy, he got so self-important that everything felt so much like he just went really heavy-handed and took himself too seriously. I mean, now we're talking about like blockades and trade agreements and midichlorians and everything. Like now he's over.
Now he's just throwing stuff out there.
He's just really Lucasing things up. And
the midichlorians, I'll definitely get on board with you about.
Well, every piece of dialogue outside of like stuff that Jar Jar does, or some of those little characters the side characters that are designed to give comedic relief, like everybody else is just robotic.
Yeah, I mean, my only thing is I don't have a problem with the shout out to Mike Money. I don't have an issue with the political talk though, because the times are different. So trade agreements, blockades, that's more in the political climate of where we are.
So the problem is that in the original trilogy, you focus on a group of scrappy ragtag people that aren't in that sphere. But then in the prequel trilogy, you focus on politicians and senators and stuff like that. And so the dialogue is going to feel more stilted.
And I would contend that in Empire you get a little bit more of that, because you get the promotion of Solo. He becomes Captain Solo, and into Jedi, and so there's a lot more. There's the scenes with the council, with the Rebel Alliance Council, and there's a little bit more politicalness, and there's the scenes of all the mappings and stuff like that. So right. I just think it was. I think what it comes down to is Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher light up a room every time that they walk into it, and the other ones just couldn't do it. And Ewan McGregor had one opportunity to do that, and unfortunately for him, the whole concept of what he was trying to sell was so bad, he couldn't even sell it. And
yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you gave Harrison Ford the dialogue that they gave Hayden Christensen, it's like he still wouldn't be able to do anything with it.
Probably.
I think that here's my thing with Hayden Christensen, and I'm actually going to defend Hayden at this point for two reasons. Two reasons why. One, I can't see anyone else playing Anakin Skywalker at this point. The only other person that I could have seen, and at the time people laughed at me when I said it, I said Leonardo DiCaprio, because I thought that, at the time, I believe, Leonardo DiCaprio had just been in Romeo and Juliet around when Attack of the Clones came out. I thought he would have been a decent choice. But Hayden Christensen has the look. Hayden Christensen looks,
Is it that old? Wow.
I feel like Romeo and Juliet was like a 90s movie.
It was late 90s, but he was coming off of the I think he was coming off of the the popularity of it.
Yeah.
And I was really a huge fan of that Romeo and Juliet. I thought he could have done it. But the thing is with Hayden, and I'm going to reference Kevin Smith when I say it, the most dangerous guy in the galaxy, one of the most dangerous individuals to ever exist, with all that power, of course he was going to be sort of a whiny teenager at first, and even a whiny adult in his early 20s, because he had spent so much time as a little kid being special because he could do all of this stuff. And then he gets taken out of his element, taken to his dream of becoming a Jedi. And then he finds out that these people who he dreamed about and their laser swords and no one can kill them, now they don't want to accept him. And then when they do accept him, it's very begrudgingly. And then they're making him do things that he feels are beneath him because he is good at what he does. And then even when he has the chance to finally gain all their respect after fighting in the Clone Wars, and he has this guy who's been pumping up his ego. Hey, listen, you're strong enough. You're stronger. Yeah, this guy respects me. He knows what he's talking about. And I'm going to have you as my personal representative on the Jedi Council. And all he hears is, I'm on the Jedi Council. I'm a master now. And people can finally see how great I am. And it's like, yeah, no, we're not going to make you a master. And then now his entire world is fallen.
Somewhere you went from talking about Leonardo DiCaprio to telling us what happened in Darth Vader's story.
Well, my whole point is that Hayden Christensen played that whininess perfect for the situation that was put in front of him. Now, could a better actor have made the dialogue work? I think DiCaprio could have done it, but Christensen carries the emotion of it, and that's
I think that we have gotten a very good like 20-something-year-old Anakin Skywalker in Kylo Ren. Like what Driver's been able to do with Kylo Ren is exactly what Hayden Christensen should have been trying to do with Anakin. That sort of like unwieldy, off the handle, sort of like crazy dark side stuff, you know? Whereas Hayden Christensen, again, I blame Lucas's dialogue, is just robotic. If you listen, when you read a book with a lot of dialogue in it, we applaud when the characters all sound different, right? But even in the mouths of different actors, all of the characters in those prequels sound the same.
Mm-hmm.
The way their cadence, the way like the rhythm of how they speak, outside again of of characters like Jar Jar. But Natalie Portman, Hayden Christensen, they all speak in that same sort of like emotionless, sort of mechanical rhythm.
And can I add to, I believe that the fact that Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen have no chemistry
That's
really
a big thing.
hurts it to no end, especially in 2 when they have to have chemistry.
Yeah.
It looks very forced a lot of the times. Even the non-dialogue scenes, they look very forced. They look like they were chopped to try and get something out of it.
Right.
You know, and it just it doesn't play. But I'm with you, Shane. I think it's all on Lucas in this instance, and Hayden Christensen did what he could with it, because Hayden Christensen is not a terrible actor. I don't care what anyone says. You could go see Life as a House, and you'll see that this kid can act. He's got chops. He just is a certain kind of actor, and he's cast as a certain kind of player, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think that Lucas is a visionary, but I think that Lucas is a bad director. The best of the original trilogy were the ones that he didn't direct. Like he was involved in them, but he gave the reins over to somebody else, right? And so like there's something to be said in that original trilogy about collaboration, right? Mm-hmm. And like getting more people involved to sort of give this world a little bit more life. In the prequel trilogy, Lucas, I feel like got too greedy. He flew too close to the sun, right? He wanted.
I think he also was so enamored with this idea that he has all these special effects now he just wanted to make these in the vision that he originally had with the original trilogy.
Those new special effects really hurt, I think.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, because you lose the practical effects of the original trilogy, and now the prequels start to feel like they're lifeless. Like
it's starting to feel like a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah, because honestly, and I just referenced Jar Jar a little bit ago. If we would have had someone actually made up instead of CGI, and we could have had that practical effect of them leaping into the air, much the same as we got, Christopher Reeve or Helen Slater as Superman and Supergirl, respectively, in the mid-'80s, in their flight, it would have looked way more natural. And with him just leaping and then doing that perfect arc and then going into the water, it would have looked a lot better practically than it did as CGI.
Well, there's a reason that there was much talk about the Yoda Palpatine lightsaber duel when it was coming, but then after the fact, there's a big reason why this guy is remembered for his fight, even though he was only in this thing for about 30 minutes total.
Oh man,
and
that
the Yoda fight,
that is number 2. That was the number 2.
Yeah, and it's because this guy is an acrobat. Like his fight is so memorable because he was doing things with his body that should only be able to be done with CGI.
Well, he's a wushu. Well, Ray Park is a wushu practitioner, and he actually pulled all of the beauty of wushu into the character of Darth Maul. Right. And then, of course, they took him and perverted him in Solo, which,
I want out of all of these freaking origin story movies that we have, like rumored, and even a Kenobi series. Like, I don't want a Kenobi series. I've watched Kenobi in so many movies. I want a Darth Maul movie.
Right. Well, all a Kenobi series is going to be is The Mandalorian, but as Obi-Wan Kenobi on Tatooine. They might as well call it Real World Tatooine. That's what it's going to end up being.
Is there going to be like, are they building toward this like Arrowverse crossover thing, like where Kenobi and Mandalorian are going to like team up to go do something?
Well, only if one of them jumps in a time machine. But I mean,
a timeline where Darth Vader's the good guy.
Oh, God.
Well, you know, there's a fan theory that the man who saves the Mandalorian in that flashback is Kenobi.
That would, I mean, my
I don't know that I
thing
subscribe to that, but
neither do I, because the timelines don't work.
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
He's dead for a good decade after
yeah.
I would.
Because the Mandalorian has to be what, in his 30s or 40s in this?
He's got to be. He's got to be in his 30s at least, because he spent especially this last episode sort of shows, like, it gives you a glimpse of who they remember him as a reckless youth.
Yeah.
And now he's more of a seasoned guy, but he's still in his prime.
Yeah.
I think that the person who probably saved him, I think it was actually Boba Fett. I think it would have been, but even still, they say that Boba and Jango aren't real Mandalorians.
Boba's dead in the timeline too.
Well, I thought. Well, no,
it's 3 years after Jedi. So.
Well, is his death because remember, he didn't die in the Sarlacc pit, but has that been negated by canon?
I don't know.
So if this thing happened
in the Sarlacc pit?
No, he did not. Matter of fact,
according to
in the expanded universe, that's why I'm wondering.
That's negated.
Well, that's why I'm saying,
yeah.
have they given word on if Boba Fett escaped the Sarlacc pit?
No,
because I'm going by what I know of, because Boba Fett played a huge role in the Legacy of the Force series, where Han and Leia's son Jason went to the dark side. Right.
Clearly, that's not canon.
Right. So I'm curious if maybe they'll address that in this series.
Well, there's a lot of speculation that the mysterious figure at the end of not this most recent episode, but episode 5, that mysterious figure is Boba Fett. They cite the spurs that he has on his boots and things like that as evidence that it might be Boba Fett. I think it's another misdirect. But
as long as it's not Darth Maul.
Also, I don't think it'll be Darth Maul, but I also am kind of like over Boba Fett. Dude, that guy kind of sucks at everything. So
yeah, he
I don't need a Boba Fett like redemption story.
We're supposed to get his origin story too, but we kind of got it in 2. That's what I don't.
Yeah, your dad's head got chopped off.
Like, I don't understand why you have this huge universe, and like Brian said, they've negated a ton of that material. But I don't know why you buy this property if you're just going to keep rehashing the stories of the same 7 characters.
Yeah, right. And I hope that, and as much as I'm excited for next week to see Rise of Skywalker, I hope that the future holds some new and exciting stuff. Like The Mandalorian is a great start, and I am so happy with The Mandalorian. It's better than I possibly thought it could be. So. And I hope that they can ride that. I seriously, and Shane, you and I talked about this before. I really hope that the way they gave the reins to Kevin Feige from Marvel, I hope Disney does the same thing to Jon Favreau, because he deserves it.
That dude gets it for sure.
Yeah. Well, Jon Favreau has made Disney a ton of money just from one decision, and that was fighting for Robert Downey Jr. I feel like they owe it to him. They owe him, and I think that the Mandalorian, and I think that the Mandalorian is his. This is him saying, "Look, I can do this."
So, and I'm still hoping that this Rian Johnson trilogy comes to fruition.
Yeah,
because I love the Agent of Chaos that is Rian Johnson.
And I think, and you and I talked about this at Thanksgiving, Shane. The one thing that would really super disappoint me is that if this ends like The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Where there's no ending. This has to end.
And I think that it will.
Finish this.
I'm sure it will. Like, honestly,
in Star Wars tradition, like at the end of the trilogy, you do have a celebration of some sort.
Right.
Or you have, like, at the end of the prequel trilogy, like we knew we were going forward.
But it would have a definitive end. It
did. Yeah.
And this aspect ends, but the world continues on.
Right.
I have so many more things that I wanted to ask you guys about, but as we see, we are starting to run up against the hour here. So I want to run through a few things. that are sort of specific to the new trilogy, but you can also call back if you want to. The first thing I'd like to ask you guys about is the Mary Sue issue.
I'm so sick of hearing about this. I really am.
Yeah.
She's not a Mary Sue. All right. Come on. Luke spent a couple of hours on a freaking ship, and then suddenly he's able to like start deflecting stun bolts, and then can use the Force to put torpedoes into an exhaust port that's barely the size of my butt crack.
Yeah, and don't forget, Anakin was a freaking child.
Yes,
and had zero training.
Yeah, and he could just build a pod and fly it with like no care in the world, and then jump into a Naboo cruiser and blow up a freaking mothership from the inside. She's not. This is once again. These are those. I don't like girls being a hero because it threatens my fragile male ego.
Well, and you also have at the very beginning of Force Awakens, you have Daisy Ridley, and you have her jumping from these enormous pieces of metal from one side to the other without fail. I mean, she kind of stumbles a little bit, but
yeah, but the story there is that Daisy Ridley or Rey has been having to do that to survive. Like she is
all of her life. Yeah.
She's a parkour expert and she's a free runner because she has to be, right? Just like Anakin's backstory.
But that's instinctual. Nobody taught her that. She's an orphan. So it's something that's inside of her. And
right. Just like how Anakin was an expert at pod racing, when he was a kid. Like these people have these talents because they're Force sensitive, probably. And so they're in tune to that stuff. Before they get any training. Training isn't there to teach you how to be a Jedi. It's there.
There's so many natural athletes in our real life.
Right.
Do you really think that LeBron James just learned how to do what he does? He's instinctual. It's something that he's a man. He was a man child when he was 13 years old. He was dunking on guys. Yeah. Nobody does that. He just he was born with it. It just happens,
Yeah. Cam Newton was able to throw darts of accuracy in high school like it was nothing. You get exceptional people with exceptional talent. And like Shane was saying, the training it refines what you've already got to make you better. And if and then I remember someone tried to say, well, how is she able to use mind trick and blah, blah, blah. What did Yoda say when Luke said, I don't believe it? And that is why you fail. She tried, it didn't work. She believed that she could do it. She had the need to do it, and it works on the weak will. Do you really think that your standard stormtrooper is just going to be like, hey, I can knock off all forms of mind control? No, they don't teach that in stormtrooper school.
Yeah, especially not to Daniel Craig.
No.
And let me just put this out there, and we can put it to bed. If those people who want to contest all of this craziness, this ability thing, can explain that why it's not feasible to me, then you need to explain to me how Barry Sanders did what Barry Sanders did.
Yes.
Yes.
That's unbelievable.
That dude is a Jedi for sure.
How could Barry Sanders be stopped like 5 to 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage and then still break and score a touchdown? He's a freaking Jedi.
Yeah.
Okay. He used the Force.
It's just crazy that people have a need.
How could Ken Griffey Jr. do what he did? How could a guy that was built rail slim be able to hit towering home runs and then be able to run that fast to catch
and if we're talking about the float in space, I contest that we're about to find out that Leia is actually the power that's behind all of the Force anyway, and she has the most innate ability to conjure whatever the Force gives her in that respect.
Hold that theory. We got theories coming up.
All right.
She never misses.
Yeah.
It's time for a quick round of overrated or underrated.
I love this. Let's do this.
Overrated or underrated, Joe, the Millennium Falcon.
Underrated.
Underrated, Brian.
Underrated.
Underrated? Really?
Yes.
That
Well,
hunk of
here's
junk?
my
Everybody, everybody
Bucket of
loves,
balls.
everybody loves that thing. How is
She's
that
got
not
it where it counts, and that's
right
all that.
in the
Although,
back end? Heyo.
Hey,
Ew.
Ray I trust. If Ray says it's the greatest ship in the world, galaxy, I trust Ray.
All right.
the
that's
only
fair.
ship that I like more than the Millennium Falcon is the Ebon Hawk, and the Millennium Falcon is the Ebon Hawk's son.
Love it. I agree. I actually I will say that the Millennium Falcon is accurately rated, and I know that that is a third ungiven choice, but it is the right answer.
Why do you always gotta cheat?
Seriously, first you cheat in the 10-minute drill, and now this. Well,
All right.
Joe says I'm not cheating if it's my. I mean, not Joe. Shane says I'm not cheating if it's half my show. I can make whatever rules I want.
All right, real quick. Overrated, underrated. The special edition.
Overrated.
Joe, what do you say?
Overrated.
Overrated. What is your beef with the special edition trilogy?
I just think it wasn't necessary. You
Mhm.
know, I just think the scenes that we've seen are cool, but they're just not necessary.
Yeah, Brian.
From a storytelling perspective, I say I'm gonna actually go the Shane Wilson route and give the Shane Wilson answer and say it's right on par, because I think especially the Han and Jabba meeting in episode 4, I think that was very, very important for storytelling reasons, and it explains why Han is so sort of agitated and wants his money. He's not just a selfish dick.
I think he works better as a selfish dick, because then he redeems himself.
Well, he also shot first, but I'm sick of that being messed with.
Yeah, let's not go with that one.
Yeah, I think that the special editions were unnecessary for sure, but I do think that as movies they're underrated. Like, I don't know why they got so much hate, but at the same time, it was. I now on the Plotaholics podcast, I often say, give me the movie you want me to watch the first time, right? Don't give me like another one later.
Right.
I appreciate a re-release on this because the prequels were coming soon and it was time to put these things back in the theater. I don't know that we needed, like that.
But you know why he did it? He did it because he was about to lose his number one position. He did it for a cash grab. He didn't do it for any other reason.
Well, all films are a cash grab, though.
I know, but
no one except indies like us make things for the love of the art.
I know, but you know what I mean.
Right.
No,
okay. Overrated, underrated. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Overrated, underrated. Baby Yoda.
Oh, he's so sweet. You know what? He is, I'm going to say under, because there's more to him than just being a cute little green mogwai. There's a lot more to him than that.
So you think he's underrated because people see him just as a cute little thing.
Yeah, he's totally underrated in that regard. Dude, can I flash back to episode 2 of The Mandalorian where he picks up that beast and flings it?
This kid is back to whatever you want to, man.
Yeah, he's powerful. Yeah, this is half mine. He is powerful as hell. He's not just cute. He's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the Tandalorian sold me. I'm gonna go underrated as well.
Underrated, yeah. I'm with it. I think that his cuteness is overrated, though.
Yeah, because
Like,
I'm sorry. If Brian Jr. would have came out looking like Baby Yoda, I'm like, yeah, put it back.
I'm gonna need him to do something else. Like, say something.
If Baby Joe had come out with the hat, you would have probably been.
Oh yeah, if he would have had the hat,
if it had been Baby Yoda.
Baby Yoda, yeah. Baby Yoda would have been perfect. He could just do what he does.
Baby Yoda is underrated.
Yes. Baby Yoda is completely underrated.
Oh, let's see.
I'm gonna get pictures of Joe Compton as a baby and just put them up in my house.
Let's see.
My mom can help you with that.
It is now time for a quick round of either or.
Ooh.
Where we pick our favorite from a list or two options. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Ready.
Either or. Queen Amidala, General Leia.
General Leia.
General Leia.
Easy, right? Easy.
Beyond easy.
All right. Either or. C-3PO and R2-D2 or BB-8.
BB-8.
I'm gonna go with the originals. 3PO and R2.
All right, we've got some dissent here, so let's hear some defense. Joe, why BB-8?
I think BB-8 is. I don't know. I think it's on par with R2D2. I've never been a big 3PO fan. I think 3PO adds a fodder to the originals that I really didn't really appreciate all that much until much later. I just think that BB-8 is more important to Rey than 3PO is to anybody. So
Yeah, fair. Brian?
I look at it as this. Number one, they are our original comic relief. It's because of them that everything really of the original trilogy was able to get set into motion. Not to mention the fact that you have the astromech droid that has the heart of a lion, and then you have an interpreter droid. Who doesn't need an interpreter droid? You know, that's very, very important, especially for someone like me who can't speak other languages at all. And I think that he's just very important. Now, if Luke had been like Darth Revan and could speak and understand multiple different languages, then 3PO is useless. But 3PO is extremely important to the rebellion as a whole, and even still now to the New Republic.
I'm here for it, man. All right, either or. For the record, my choice on the other two is I don't know that I have a choice, honestly. I mean, like I like them both. I
do too. I love BB-8. I love his Zippo thumbs up.
Yeah, actually, maybe BB-8 for me too, because he's snappier. You know, like R2D2 and 3PO. Those are the boomer generation's droids. I need something a little faster.
Oh, you're an asshole. I'm not a boomer.
All right, either or. Porgs or Ewoks.
You can take them both.
You take them both?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know, man. My space teddy bears, my angry Teddy Ruxpins. I mean, come on, they eat the flesh of Imperials. Honestly, though, I could probably do without each of them. How the hell do you shame Chewbacca for eating meat? F you, Porgs. F those guys.
Joe, you said just get rid of all of them, right?
Yeah, I don't have an opinion either way on those.
I am such a I'm an Ewok apologist as well because I appreciate their guerrilla warfare.
That is true. I was actually thinking in that one episode of The Mandalorian, I'm like, man, if they had some Ewoks on that planet, that ATST would be nothing.
All right, either or. I think I know the answer to this one too. Alternative lightsaber design: Kylo Ren's or Darth Maul's?
Ooh.
I'm gonna go with Kylo Ren's just because of the Saturday Night Live skit.
I love that skit so much.
It looks like a third grader made it.
Well, you don't have to look at it anymore.
This is very difficult but I'm probably gonna go with Kylo Ren's just because the double-bladed lightsaber, when it's not activated, is very, very clunky. And you have to be very, very good with a staff to be able to wield it. Where with Kylo Ren's, dude, that is a broadsword. That shows power. He is a beast.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna go with Kylo.
All right, one last either or for you, if you will. I've got to remember what it was. Oh yes, either or. I'm scrolling so much. Either or. The bright-eyed, naive Luke Skywalker, or the grizzled, disappointed old man Luke Skywalker.
I go with the get off my lawn, Luke, because I'm gonna go into Tashi Station and get some power converters. What? You're gonna go to the corner store and get porn. That's what you're gonna do.
There's something charming about the naivety of the young Luke Skywalker, though. But I'm gonna go with the old man as well because I think the old man has more wisdom and has much more. As he gets that cool Jedi moment, you know.
Yeah, well, he also has, I think, a better or more realistic view of the galaxy, right? And the only real credible critique of Last Jedi that I've ever heard is people who quibble over what they do with Luke Skywalker's character, and that's a legitimate critique. If you want to quibble with the storytelling, right? And so you can decide that you don't like that they've made Luke's character this like old aloof sort of like I don't care about the Force anymore kind of guy. But I think that they explain it well. And what I think
isn't that Yoda? I mean,
right.
Yeah.
I think that what I like about one of the things I love about The Last Jedi is
and that is such a great poster, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that poster too in a second. The thing I love about The Last Jedi is that we get that same story 3 times about what happens at the Jedi Temple with him and Kylo Ren, which I think is a really interesting lesson in perspective.
Yes.
And that's one of those things that a lot of people complained about because they want Luke to be this like pure hero, but there are no good guys.
There's no such thing as a pure hero in life, period. The only real pure hero that we've got really is Captain America. And even still, he realizes where he's wrong at times. Even everything that he stood for, he realized was wrong. Yeah. So I think that, to your point, that is an amazing point of perspective. We see things from Kylo's perspective, from his perspective. And it's like, and I think that the old angry Luke that is what that bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kid turns into. Right. You ask anyone who, and Joe, you can speak to this. You're a military guy. Kids that go into the military
bright-eyed,
I'm going to serve my country and blah, blah, blah. They get in and they see what the world is like and how the government is. And when you get out, you've got a bitterness to you.
Yeah. Luckily, I went in bitter, so I won't. But yeah, no, you're totally right about that. It's absolute. It's the stress. It's the different way. I mean, you can look at presidents and just see that. Look at Barack Obama before he became president, and look at him now. I mean, the white hair in the way that his hair doesn't grow anymore.
Age so quickly, unless
it's all stress and you know, you put that kind of thing on that whole idea that I made this kid turn to the dark side on a person. They're all going to end up that way. It's
especially because that's not just a kid, like that's his nephew.
Your nephew. Yeah. That is that is
your best friend and your sister's kid.
Yeah. You're probably his godfather.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, being a Jedi Master, and I think that's something and that's part of the reason why I think they were trying to keep that's why there's also no young men on the Jedi Council, is because you have to make these so difficult decisions and they age you so quickly, and it kills you in a lot of ways. It kills your spirit.
Yeah.
All right. So I said I wanted to talk about the poster for The Last Jedi, the poster art. The poster art for all of the films, especially in the trilogies, are all pretty coherent or cohesive. They have very similar sort of aesthetics the whole way through. And then this is your Force Awakens, and then
so beautiful.
And then something like this will be the Rise of Skywalker. You also have the image of them like fighting on that little chunk of Death Star, right? Like
that looks one of them. So I cannot wait for this movie.
But but this image is so different. Like the color palette is different, the symmetry of it is different.
It kind of reminds me of what the Revenge of the Jedi poster looked like. And this is honestly, as much as I love all of the Star Wars film posters, and I'm talking the main entries, with the exception of Episode 2, but this one is by far my favorite because of the fact that it gives the lead players everything, but then throughout all of the Force Awakens, all we were wondering, even before we realized that Luke was hidden, was where's Luke? Where's Luke? And now we have this heavy weight at the very top of the whole thing. And everything from the Force Awakens carried the specter of Luke Skywalker, and it's physically embodied right here in this image.
The Last Jedi also had the most interesting color palette of any Star Wars film. Like visually, The Last Jedi looked different than other Star Wars movies at times, especially that red-white contrast that happens in a couple of different places in that movie is really, I think, really striking and really nice.
It is also the only movie that starts from the ending of the previous film. It starts right at the moment that the previous film ends, and that's, to me, that's that is
never happened
good
before.
Storytelling.
It absolutely is. Not to mention the fact that I think it says, and it says to your credit, once again, we praised Rian Johnson earlier, and I can't praise him enough, is that he is very good at showing you the world, and he doesn't really, in his shooting style, does not allow, he doesn't have to tell you anything. He can show it to you and go from there. And you know what, Mike Faria makes a pretty decent point, and I can actually bring this back too, where he says that the one thing that bugs him in the whole series is that the technology hasn't changed. You know, why are they still in X-Wings and TIE fighters?
I can tell you the reason. Why mess with perfection?
Exactly. Why?
Well,
it's the same thing as that all of the lightsabers are still
resistance fighters, so they're still sort of limited in terms of what they can do.
Right. You know? Not to mention the fact that the technology of the lightsabers hasn't changed either.
Yeah.
And
the Resistance doesn't strike me as an organization that has a large research and development budget. Like, they barely have 70 people.
Especially now. So, especially after that whole fuel issue.
Yeah. So it is time, and we're over the hour, but it's time, guys, to discuss our theories.
Yeah.
How does it all end? Brian, I'll start with you.
Well, for one, I've been saying it for forever. Rey is a clone of she's a clone of Sidious. In a lot of instances, I think that with Rey, we're seeing actually a form of Mara Jade Skywalker from the now non-canon expanded universe.
Wow, look at you.
Yeah. I believe that I'm also going to go with the fact that Snoke was probably a failed clone, and now we've got the proper clone of Sidious coming back, and I think that he and Rey are probably going to kill each other. And I think that the New Republic is the New Resistance. They're actually going to be led by Poe Dameron. And I think that Finn and Rose are fine. Finn and Rose are going to get to have their sort of happily ever after.
All right, Joe.
I believe there is a clone among us, and their name is Finn. I think Finn is the clone, and I think Finn is the linchpin in this entire thing. I think that Finn is the reason that everybody does what they do and how they do it, and I believe that it's going to be up to Rey and Ben to make a choice at the end of this movie, and whatever choice they make may be good or bad. But I think the manufacturing of Sidious returning is basically the Judgment Day, whatever you want to call it, God or whatever, to saying here's where you can be. You can be good, you can be bad. Decide. And if you want to fight it out for who's good and who's bad, that's fine with me. But I think Finn is the reason that this whole thing happens. I think that we discovered that Leia is the most powerful force in the entire universe. And she, from beyond, commands whatever Rey is going to do.
All right.
I like that.
Strap in, boys and girls, because I'm going to tell you how it ends.
Nice.
Well, you are the Dark Lord of the Plotaholics.
And you're you own half of this, so.
I am not sure that there are clones. I believe that Rey was created by Sidious, much like we could believe that Anakin was.
He went on a weekend bender.
I think that you remember
it was sort of alluded to the Plagueis created
right
Anakin.
Yeah. So that if you are a strong enough Force user that you can create life or save life or whatever, and I think that Rey was created by Sidious when Anakin failed. When Anakin failed the dark side and went back and sacrificed himself to save Luke as a contingency plan. Now, what I believe is what I think is interesting is that the Jedi all have agency, right? Like no one, like he creates Rey, and he sows the seeds in her to be evil, and we saw that in The Last Jedi. But he can't force her to make that choice, right? But we see in some of the promotional stuff that she's still dealing with that in this episode, right? At least some, even if that dark Rey image is just in a vision or in a dream or something.
I cannot wait to see that.
Here's where I think the third act goes. I think the third act will see Kylo switch to join Rey to fight Palpatine. And then if they defeat Palpatine, actually, I'm sorry, I'm a little twisted up here. I think Rey and Kylo will fight each other, but I don't think she will kill Kylo. I think Kylo will switch. He'll have his redemptive moment, right? But on a third plane, you're going to have all of the Force ghosts of past fighting all of the Force ghosts of past, right? All of the Force Jedi and all of the Ghost Jedi and all of the Ghost Siths will fight on this sort of like end-game level third plane for the soul of the universe.
Rey on your left.
Right. Yeah, and then these portals open up, and here comes Luke. Force, because I can't believe that. Do what?
Hi, Peter Parker. I'm Captain Marvel.
Right. I can't believe that this movie is going to end without Luke's Force Ghost, which we've seen him like project this thing in different ways in The Last Jedi. I can't believe that the third act of this thing is going to come and go without him and some form of Leia being a part of the fight.
I think there was a huge misdirect in The Last Jedi that people gloss over, and that's when Kylo Ren says, "I'm going to kill the Last Jedi," and he goes, "You're wrong. I am not the Last Jedi." And then they pan to Rey. Yeah. I believe that Leia is the Last Jedi.
Well, that's what we've heard, right? We've heard JJ say that Leia was going to be the Last Jedi, and that they've had to, they've got a lot of footage that they're clearly going to use.
Yeah.
I'm going to call this now, and this is going to be a spoiler alert. No. I am going to bawl my eyes out for Carrie Fisher. I am going to bawl like mad because it's still, I think that like, yeah, she died last year, but this is going to like reopen that wound because there's a thing about Carrie Fisher, and I know we're up against it, but Carrie Fisher, more so than Mark Hamill and even more so than Harrison Ford, she has really embodied a lot of what Star Wars is and was. She was one of the first female heroines that really let it be known that she didn't need help. She could do things on her own.
She did it 7 years before Ellen Ripley did it.
Yeah, well, the original Alien came out in 1980?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 3 years, 4 years prior, because they filmed this in like 75, 76.
Right.
But she sort of took what Scarlett O'Hara was for why is this escaping me now?
Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, for Gone with the Wind. She embodied it in Star Wars, and she showed a lot of little girls back in the day that you can be powerful in your own right. And she has been the embodiment of someone that no one would expect to have power and be good at what they did. And she embodied it, and this is going to be as much the swan song of the late, great Carrie Fisher than any of those films have been for anyone else. And
I'm so glad that they're not doing a digitized version of her, that they're only using old footage.
Absolutely. Because the horrible CGI of her in Rogue One, I felt that it was very disrespectful to her because Carrie Fisher, and I realized this.
They asked her if it would be okay.
I mean, I understand that, but they could have done so much better. And her, the image of Leia that we got in Rogue One versus Leia in Episode 4, she's not just gorgeous. She's powerful. Mm-hmm. She's mighty. Like that image right there. She is not scared. She is calculating. She is strong and she is powerful. And in that horrible CGI of her, it just made her look like a fake ass Barbie doll.
Well, you know what I've appreciated about her portrayal in the new trilogy is that they've allowed her to age.
Yes.
But she's still strong, you know?
She's still beautiful. She's still powerful. But she's as battle weary as her brother. But she has still she was the glue that kept the original trilogy together. And she was the glue that kept this new trilogy together. Like Princess Leia is that constant glue. She is that she is that one constant. When there is no Luke and there is no Han, she's at the forefront. When Luke and Han show up, she's what keeps everything going. And they are fighting for her. Luke is fighting for her. Han is fighting for her. And she's battling just as much as they are, if not more. And then when her and Han break up, she continues the resistance. When Luke disappears, she is still doing the resistance. And she is not holding any hatred to either one of them over what happened with her son. And then she is still showing him the love of a mother. That just shows you how powerful of a character she is.
Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say real quickly that the reason why she doesn't hold a grudge against Luke is because she foresaw it happening.
Yeah, she knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
A couple of final things here to tie us up. I'll ask you guys some pointed questions. Do you think that on the other side of Rise of Skywalker, will public opinion continue to change about The Last Jedi? Will this movie satisfy us as the third part of a trilogy, and will it unify everything?
I think yes.
I agree with Joe. I think it will, because, and you said it earlier, Shane, when you know that a series is going to have 3 chapters, you cannot say which one is bad until you've seen it all.
I would not judge.
Even though right now J.J. Abrams and everybody's doing their best misdirect in shitting on Rian Johnson,
right?
In the press, I do truly believe, and I'll die with this. I truly believe Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams worked in collaboration in that second film, and that he didn't do anything without J.J. Abrams okaying it and approving it beforehand. And I'll take that to my grave. I believe that happened, because
I won't even go so far to say approval. I think they came up with it together, and they were like, "Hey, what do you think?" It's almost like
how he could have fired him, just like he fired Colin Trevorrow, and he fired so many people, J.J. Abrams. So why wouldn't you fire him if he didn't believe that he was doing what he wanted him to do?
Absolutely. Yeah, because Disney, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, because Disney gave him the reins of this new trilogy.
I love The Last Jedi, guys.
Me too.
I love it so much because so many people hate it. But I
love it just to spite you all.
I just love how chaotic it is. Like, it just sends the whole state of affairs into a spiral. He kills Supreme Leader Snoke. That was supposed to be our big bad, right? Like, I love that shit. That's so good.
That was some amazing.
I think he does it to help JJ with this third one. I think that's all going to catapult this third one into a new atmosphere, because maybe JJ was afraid that if he just didn't follow the formula, that people would, slap him in the face.
They would turn on him.
So bring in your whipping boy to do your dirty work for you.
This gives him carte blanche to basically take this anywhere, because the people who hated Last Jedi aren't going to tune into this anyway, and they're going to pan it for whatever reason they want to pan it for, because they're just assholes.
Haters are going to hate no matter what. They're going to come up with reasons to hate.
So J.J. Abrams now has a little bit of a wider net to cast. And I think that's why he let Rian Johnson do what he did.
Yeah, even if most of the fanboys wish that J.J. Abrams had a wider net.
He ain't wrong. Hey, you ain't wrong.
They missed the days where whiteface was allowed.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do believe that Lando plays a big part in this movie as well.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, the thing is with the toxic fandom, they want their heroes and they want their stories to be white centric. They
also want they want everything to be just what they want it to be. And for a lot of those very vocal opponents, that means white and man.
They want white, they want man, and they want woman subservient. That's what they want.
But they still loved Princess Leia. They still loved the original trilogy, and
right,
she wasn't
they don't. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's almost like their arguments are so short-sighted that they don't realize.
They're self-defeating in a lot of ways, right?
They really are, because at the end, because in their minds, it wasn't a story that was led by Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia. It was led by Luke Skywalker and Han Solo with Leia along for the ride, and that's not the case. So it's almost as if they refuse to see that because it doesn't stroke their own narrative.
Yeah.
I'll say one thing about Leia. She is my kind of scum.
For sure. Absolutely.
All I know is that if Sharon dresses up as Princess Leia for like the wedding, y'all all are just gonna either have to turn your backs or whatever. But otherwise, y'all are gonna be very uncomfortable.
I mean, which Princess Leia?
Right?
I don't care.
One last question, guys, and we'll wrap this thing up. Where do we go from here? We all know that this is the end of the Skywalker saga, but we also know that there are at least 2 trilogies in development and a slew of TV shows. So what's next?
I think The Mandalorian carries the mantle for a little bit and bridges the gap between these two trilogies and worlds, and then we kind of let it linger a little bit so that we appreciate what we just received. What we just received, and I think that. Is it the Russo brothers that are doing the next trilogy, or somebody?
I've heard so many different. names.
So there's the Rian Johnson trilogy, but then there was the creators of Game of Thrones had a trilogy, but they backed out of that.
God damn it.
I think that they got fired. They got fired.
No, did they get fired?
They got fired.
Come on.
We have heard rumors that at least one of the trilogies in development is a Knights of the Old Republic trilogy, which would be really cool, probably.
I would love to see.
It will be interesting to see who's left standing at the end of this thing, right? Because there's going to be people left standing.
Absolutely.
It's not going to turn into Rogue One where the whole thing blows up, but that's where I would go. I'm waiting to see who's left standing, and from there, we'll know where this is going to go. But I believe that this is going to take a hiatus. That these movies are going to take a hiatus, and that The Mandalorian is going to.
Yeah, well, we're definitely not getting any more one-off movies. I think that they're better served to do their one-off stuff for Disney Plus.
I agree. 100%.
Give me Solo on Disney.
Well, I know
Plus.
that Obi-Wan. I know that Obi-Wan is either in production or in.
I think they're going to be starting production in. I think they're starting production in early 2020 for 2021 release.
That, so that's happening. So.
Yeah. Well, I think Joe is 100% correct. The Mandalorian is going to be carrying the Star Wars mantle for at least the next year and a half to 2 years.
And what you're probably honestly going to get on some level is you're going to get Kenobi to rectify some of the wrongs of the prequel trilogy.
Yeah,
I think so. I
nothing says that Kenobi has to exclusively take place after the prequel,
and we're going to get Qui-Gon Jinn again, so that's going to be fun. So that'll be interesting to see how if Liam Neeson decides to do it again, but. They might go with a younger character actor, but
he needs a PR win right now. So
he really does. Yes, he does. Well, here's one thing that I'm thinking,
and more Darth Maul too. We'll get more Darth Maul in that series.
Yeah,
as well.
That's good. I think one of the things that we're especially going to see for a little bit is that we're going to see a little bit more attention to the non-Jedi and non-Force users, so that way the Jedi and the Force users can sort of get back to being in that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that made Rogue One so interesting.
Is that there were no Force users except for Vader at the very end.
And that's still, I think that Disney gave us maybe the greatest Darth Vader scene ever. That was so
great.
badass.
I'm still waiting for them. I'm surprised it hasn't been done. I'm surprised Disney hasn't done it yet. We've all seen the fan video of a sort of an updated Vader versus Obi-Wan fight on the Death Star. I'm waiting for Disney to buy the rights to that and then just splice that into episode 4.
Oh God, that'd be awful.
I know, but sometimes the mouse hopefully the mouse doesn't do it, but no, I seriously think that we're going to start seeing a lot more of the dark and gritty side of the galaxy far away.
Like that. Yeah,
I do as well. And so that way, when we do see a Jedi, kind of like when Star Wars Galaxies came out, very few people were able to play as Jedi. So that way, when you got a Jedi, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
I agree.
Joe, anything else?
No, I'm excited. Thank you, J.J. Abrams, for releasing this on my birthday. I know you did it just for me, so thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Well, you and JJ do have that closeness. You guys are in Christmas card contact, if I recall correctly.
Well, ever since Star Trek II, when he destroyed Wrath of Khan, he and I have had some words. Yes.
I love you, Joe.
Well, I guess that's gonna do it for this very special episode of the
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Joe, tell the people where they can find you and all of your shenanigans.
GoIndyNow.com, and I'm live on GoIndyNow on YouTube and GoIndyNow pretty much everywhere. Me personally, I have a new book coming out in March, so you'll hear more about that as the time goes on. So
good. So that Brandon Iron didn't have to come out.
And well, I'm not. I will neither confirm or deny I've been prodded.
As for the Plotaholics, you can always find us on your various social media platforms at Plotaholics and on the interwebs at plotaholics.com. You can look out for our next podcast episode on Monday. That is going to be Bad Santa. And let's see. Oh, and I already have Kylo Tan's Mandalorian recap for this week, so it should be up on Tuesday.
Yeah, I decided to stop being late. I was starting to feel bad about it. Shane was shaming me without really saying words. I could feel his disappointment in me through the Force.
Yes. Feel the shame flow through you.
Oh God, it feels like high school all over again.
Shame. Bing bing. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, and we will.
I give this episode 0 shots.
This episode right here, 0 shots.
0 shots.
Yeah, I actually did 0 shots during this episode, so that's
same here. Yeah, so it's a trifecta.
I've been remarkably sober during this episode of the Plotaholics.
I'm sure your liver thanked you.
You are though.
You know what, Joe?
It is noon where you are, so
that is fair. Well, 1:30 now, so
yeah, which means it's drinking time.
Yeah,
but right now Shane's liver is thanking him because on usual days by now he's already had about 2 shots.
Like my liver's like, we've been awake for a little while. What's going on?
What is going on?
I'm waiting.
All right, guys. Well, thank you, Joe, for being here, and thank you, Kylo Tan, for arranging a little time for us here on this Saturday. I hope that the weather's better where you guys are. It's kind of been nasty here.
It's gray as hell out here.
Actually, it's clearing up around here. So,
Joe, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why does the corner of your room look like a bubble?
I was wondering that. It doesn't.
Never know the answer.
Like it's got to be your lens, right?
You'll never know the answer.
That is some dark side voodoo over there.
Jedi master my ass.
All right. Well, we will talk to you guys later.